Hey everybody, today we've got another hypothetical matchup. This time it's going to be Sherrod Brown for the Democrats up against Phil Scott for the Republicans. This was suggested to me in the comments. It's extremely difficult and your map is going to look different. So let's try to get into this. Of course, Sherrod Brown, U.S. Senator from Ohio. Phil Scott, Governor of Vermont. Phil Scott, a very liberal Republican. Sherrod Brown also is considered to be a liberal senator. In this matchup, he's going to make inroads with the working class Rust Belt voters. Phil Scott would have to get his name recognition up. To be fair, I'm assuming he does, but I think he's going to be cast as a rhino, and in most states he would be considered a Democrat. Some issues he might even be farther to the left of Sherrod Brown on. It's anyone's guess as to how he would actually run his campaign, but I think Republican turnout everywhere from the Trump base to the establishment is going to be reduced. I think even Republicans from 10 years ago, or never Trump Republicans, they're still going to think Phil Scott is way too liberal, and a lot of them are going to stay home. Some of them would be willing to cross over and support Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown comes off as more moderate, but I always hear that he's very socially progressive. If that gets blown up, that could cost him some votes, but in general, Brown is going to get out a lot of the turnout he needs. Phil Scott comes off as a nice guy. That might help in the suburbs, but Sherrod Brown comes off as more of a fighter for the working class. He has the gravelly voice, and he's from Ohio. That's going to help him. However, this map would probably look different if I made this map in a week from now. I think it's nearly impossible to fill out. There's just way too many unknowns. There's going to be different things you're going to emphasize and other things you're not going to emphasize, and that's going to result in a crazy map. This is going to be one of those scramblers where it's almost anything goes. So having said that, we could talk a little bit more about it at the end, and I wonder who's going to win this matchup, but let's just try to go through these states. Let's start in Alaska. That is going to go blue. It is going to flip and go leans for Brown. Hawaii, safe for Brown. Up to the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, safe for Brown. Nevada, likely for Brown. Idaho and Utah, red states, reduced margin, but still double digits safe for Scott. Arizona, likely for Brown. Montana, leans for Scott. Wyoming, safe for Scott. Colorado, New Mexico, safe for Brown. North and South Dakota, safe for Scott. Nebraska, at large, low double digits, safe for Scott. The 1st District, leans for Scott. The 2nd District, likely for Brown. 3rd District, safe for Scott. Kansas, likely for Scott. Oklahoma, safe for Scott. Texas, that's going to be very close. It's going to flip. It's going to go tilt for Brown. Minnesota, safe for Brown. Iowa, that's going to flip. It's going to go leans for Brown. Missouri, likely for Scott. Arkansas, Louisiana, safe for Scott. Up to Wisconsin, likely for Brown. Illinois, safe for Brown. Michigan, safe for Brown. Indiana, likely for Scott. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, safe for Scott. Down to Florida, that's going to go leans for Brown. Georgia, likely for Brown. South Carolina, likely for Scott. North Carolina, leans for Brown. Up to Ohio, Sherrod Brown's home state. It's tough for the Democrats to win it here these days, but Brown is going to be the guy in this matchup up against Scott. He's going to flip it, and it's going to go leans for Brown. West Virginia, safe for Scott. Up to the corner, Maine at large, safe for Brown. 1st District, safe for Brown. 2nd District, likely for Brown. New Hampshire, likely for Brown. Now we've got Vermont, Phil Scott's home state. Statewide politics are different than national politics, even though he's extremely popular in his home state, and he would reduce the margin significantly. I still think Brown is going to win it. I still think it's going to be over 5, so likely for Brown. New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., safe for Brown. Pennsylvania, high single digits, likely for Brown. Last state, Virginia, that's going to be safe for Brown. So there's your final total. That comes out to 416 for Sherrod Brown, 122 for Phil Scott. So in my opinion, Sherrod Brown wins this very easily. It's a landslide. Phil Scott is just too liberal. He has very little appeal with national Republicans and the base. Sherrod Brown is going to do well enough with the working class. He's generally going to do at least 5 up to 10 points better across most of these states. That results in some big swings and some unusual states flipping. Now, in a difficult matchup like this, I think the thing to do is to not spend too much time thinking about it. There's constantly different takes you could have, different things to emphasize, and tweaks you can make to the margins. There's not really any great answers for this. I also don't think there's too many bad answers either. The main takeaway is I think Sherrod Brown would be a slam dunk to win this. Phil Scott has almost zero chance in my opinion. He's not a good national fit. Sherrod Brown is not a bad candidate himself. Of course, all the other factors come into play. candidate, the national environment, the running mate, what the key issues are at the time, and I'm sure you could look at the specific issues and find out what the difference is between these two candidates, but I think a lot of voters would just view them as two Democrats. That is, unless Phil Scott does some massive rebranding, tries to run some type of Mitt Romney campaign, but I still think he's just going to come off as out of touch and elite. The Trump base is going to have no interest in him. Some of them are going to cross over to Sherrod Brown. As long as Sherrod Brown sticks to economics and doesn't go hard on social justice, I think he would do just fine in this election. But this is just what I think. At this point in time, things could change. I'm not a big fan of doing these difficult hypotheticals, but this one I wanted to get out of the way. So let me know in the comments, do you agree with this map? My guess is probably not. So how does your map look, and why do you think that is? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.